Carmen Vega was preparing for the most important day of her young life. At 12 years old, she was the star of San Isidro School, an elite institution in Seville. Talented, intelligent, and dedicated, Carmen was the pride of her parents, who sacrificed everything to ensure her education. That morning, the school was abuzz with excitement over the annual talent contest, and Carmen was determined to give her best. She knew this was her chance to shine, to show the world what she was capable of. However, what she didn't know was that, in the shadows, forces were moving to ensure her light would be extinguished forever. The auditorium was packed. Teachers, parents, students, and even the local press had gathered to watch the talent contest that year after year revealed the best and brightest of San Isidro School. Carmen was backstage, nervous but confident. She had rehearsed her performance countless times. Every note, every movement, everything was perfect. Her mother, sitting in the front row, was waving encouragingly at her, and her father, a man of few words, cast a proud glance her way. When Carmen's name was announced, the auditorium erupted in applause. She walked onto the stage, took a deep breath, and began her performance. The music filled the space, and for a brief moment, everything seemed perfect. But at the end of her performance, the unexpected happened. One of the judges, with a serious expression, stood up and asked for silence. "There is something wrong," he said, in a tone that made Carmen's heart freeze. "We received a report that this performance was plagiarized." The shock was instantaneous. Murmurs and whispers filled the auditorium. Carmen, perplexed, tried to protest, but the words wouldn't come. The judges then took her to a room next door, where the accusation was formalized. They presented a forged piece of evidence, a video that supposedly showed Carmen rehearsing with sheet music that wasn't her own. Desperate, Carmen vehemently denied it, but no one was listening. Within hours, a decision was made. She would be expelled from school, effective immediately. Her parents, devastated, tried to intervene, but the former principal, Don Alfonso Mendoza, was inflexible. Carmen Vega, the prodigy girl, was marked as a cheater. The news spread quickly. Within days, all of Seville knew the story, and Carmen's name became synonymous with shame. Her family, already facing financial difficulties, found themselves even more isolated, without the support they once received from the community. Carmen, with a broken heart, left Seville with her parents, vowing never to return. But as the car drove away from the city, a spark of determination ignited within her. One day she would come back, not as the humiliated girl, but as a powerful woman, ready to seek justice. 20 years passed since that fateful day when Carmen Vega was unjustly expelled from San Isidro School. She had rebuilt her life away from Seville, graduated with honors in law, and became a respected lawyer in Madrid. However, the scars of the past never faded, and the thirst for justice continued to burn inside her. So, when she received a phone call from Javier Ruiz, the new principal of the school, Carmen knew the time had come to face her demons. Javier Ruiz was desperate. Under his administration, San Isidro School had modernized, but a shadow from the past threatened to destroy everything he had built. A lawsuit led by a group of former students and their parents alleged that the school was involved in corrupt practices and demanded the institution's closure. With no options left, Javier decided to seek out the best lawyer he knew, Carmen Vega, unaware of her painful connection to the school. When Carmen arrived in Seville, she felt a mix of nostalgia and anxiety. The streets, the buildings, and even the smell of the city brought forth memories she preferred to forget. However, she remembered the reason for her visit: revenge and justice. Her first meeting with Javier Ruiz was tense. He explained the situation, but Carmen was more interested in another matter. "Before anything else, I need full access to the school's files, especially the records from 20 years ago," Carmen said firmly. Javier hesitated for a moment, but soon agreed. He didn't know the details, but he sensed that Carmen's past was intertwined with the fate of the school. In the following days, Carmen delved into the school's archives. The school had changed a lot, but certain names still appeared frequently in the documents. Don Alfonso Mendoza, the former principal, and Eduardo Fernandez, a math teacher who still taught at the school. Carmen clearly remembered both. Mendoza, who seemed to be a pillar of the community, and Fernandez, who had always been cold and distant. The first clues began to emerge. Carmen discovered that in the years she was expelled, the school was involved in a series of financial scandals suppressed by the administration. Generous donations from influential families bought privileges for their children, while talented students without connections were ignored or, as in Carmen's case, sabotaged. On a rainy afternoon, Carmen decided to confront Eduardo Fernandez. She found him in the small office he had occupied for decades. Upon seeing her, Eduardo turned pale. It was as if he had been expecting this moment for years. "I knew you would come back, Carmen," he said, his voice trembling. "The truth is, I have always been a coward." Carmen remained silent, waiting for him to continue. Fernandez sighed and began to confess. He revealed that at the time, Don Alfonso Mendoza was under pressure from a powerful local family. They wanted their son to win the talent contest at any cost. Mendoza, fearing the loss of donations, ordered Fernandez to plant false evidence against Carmen. "I didn't have the courage to refuse," Eduardo admitted, tears in his eyes. "But the guilt has haunted me ever since." Carmen felt a mix of anger and relief. The confirmation of her innocence brought some solace, but the pain of what she had suffered was still palpable. Eduardo handed Carmen a set of documents proving the corruption and Mendoza's involvement. With this evidence, Carmen now held the key to her revenge. But upon returning to the hotel that night, Carmen received an unexpected visit. Alejandro Montero, the leader of the lawsuit against the school, appeared with a tempting proposal. He wanted Carmen to join his cause, promising to expose all the corruption in the school and ensure that the institution was shut down once and for all. "You have the chance to destroy the place that destroyed your life," Alejandro said. "Why not take it?" Carmen felt torn. Her mission was clear: to clear her name and seek justice. However, destroying the school could harm hundreds of innocent students who had nothing to do with the crimes of the past. And then there was Lucia, her former friend, who was now a teacher at the school. Lucia sought out Carmen the next day and revealed that there were hidden real estate interests behind the lawsuit. Closing the school would mean selling the land to wealthy developers, leaving the students helpless. Faced with this dilemma, Carmen realized that her fight was not just personal, but had much greater implications. She had the power to destroy or save San Isidoro School. But for that, she would need to make a decision that would define not only her future, but that of many others. Carmen spent the night awake, pondering the revelations and the proposal she had received. Her mind was in conflict. On one side, the anger and desire for revenge screamed for her to join Alejandro Montero and destroy the school that had ruined her life. On the other side, her conscience and sense of justice reminded her that personal vengeance could cause irreparable harm to current students who had nothing to do with the mistakes of the past. In the morning, after a run to try to clear her mind, Carmen made her decision. She would not destroy the school, but reform it. The truth would come to light, but in a way that could heal the open wounds instead of opening new ones. The decision filled her with renewed energy, and she knew she had to move quickly to put her plan into action. The first thing she did was meet again with Eduardo Fernandez. Carmen knew that the former teacher was a key piece in what was to come. Eduardo, still consumed by guilt, was willing to collaborate. "Eduardo, you need to testify," Carmen said, her voice firm yet understanding. "You can help correct the wrong you committed and, at the same time, expose the corruption that existed back then." Fernandez hesitated for a moment, but after a long sigh, he nodded. "I will do it, Carmen. For my conscience, and for what you went through." With Eduardo's cooperation secured, Carmen met with Javier Ruiz, the current principal of the school. Presenting him with the evidence she possessed and Fernandez's confession, Carmen made him aware of the gravity of the situation. "Javier, the school needs to change, and it needs to start now," she said. "We need to expose the truth and initiate a complete reform." She had chosen not to destroy the institution that once ruined her life, but by exposing the corruption and leading the changes, she knew she was treading on delicate territory. Many current students and their families viewed the school as a symbol of tradition and prestige, and despite the revelations, not everyone agreed with the reforms. Looking at the school corridors, Carmen remembered walking those same halls 20 years ago, full of dreams and expectations. Now, as a maidwoman, a powerful lawyer, she found herself in a leadership position, but the internal conflict consumed her. She constantly questioned whether she had made the right choice in not joining Alejandro Montero's lawsuit. Lucia, her old friend, was a constant source of support, but she also brought up issues that Carmen had not fully considered. One afternoon, the two were sitting in a cafe near the school when Lucia revealed what she knew about the real estate interests behind the lawsuit. "It's not just about justice for the former students, Carmen," Lucia said, lowering her voice as if fearing to be overheard. "The land where the school is located is extremely valuable. If San Isidoro is closed, big developers will buy it all and build luxury condos. That would leave many students without a place to study. And worse, the entire local community would be harmed." Carmen fell silent for a moment, absorbing the information. Now she fully understood what was at stake. It wasn't just her personal justice or the school's reputation. There was a much larger web of interests involved, affecting the future of hundreds of students and the city of Seville itself. However, the moral dilemma didn't leave her in peace. Closing the school would have been the easiest way to take revenge and completely clear her name. But it would cause immense collateral damage. Carmen knew she was right to choose reforms, but now, more than ever, she felt the weight of being the only one to bear that responsibility. Meanwhile, Eduardo Fernandez, the former teacher who confessed his involvement in Carmen's scandal, sought her out again. He seemed more relieved, as if the act of exposing the truth had lifted a weight off his shoulders. Eduardo requested a meeting with Carmen in the old office of Don Alfonso Mendoza, the corrupt former director who had been primarily responsible for his expulsion. Carmen hesitated to accept, but she knew there were still loose ends to tie up. In the office, surrounded by memories of the past, she found Eduardo sitting, examining old papers. He handed Carmen an old letter that had never been revealed. A letter of apology from Don Alfonso, written shortly before his death. In the letter, the former director admitted his mistake, explaining that although he had been manipulated by the wealthy families who funded the school, he deeply regretted destroying the future of such a talented girl as Carmen. He mentioned, in his final lines, that he hoped one day the truth would be revealed and that Carmen would find the justice she deserved. Carmen was moved. But at the same time, she felt the anguish of a wound that had never healed. The director's words could not erase the suffering she and her family had endured. However, in some way, it seemed to close a chapter. As Carmen processed these new revelations, Alejandro Montero reappeared in her life with one last offer. He still believed that the school needed to be closed and knew that Carmen's reforms were gaining traction in the media and public opinion. He invited her to a private dinner, where he presented his final arguments. "Carmen," he began, serious, "you have the chance to close this cycle of pain and injustice once and for all. Think of the families who have suffered because of this school. You have done a lot, but there is still time to destroy this symbol of corruption once and for all." Carmen listened to him in silence. Alejandro was persuasive, and his proposal was tempting. But deep down, she knew that closing the school would only benefit real estate interests. Still, doubt continued to gnaw at her spirit. "I don't want just revenge, Alejandro," she replied after a long moment. "I want justice. And sometimes justice means correcting, not destroying." Alejandro looked at her with a mix of frustration and respect. He knew he had lost the battle. Carmen had made her decision. With her decision firmly in mind, Carmen called a final press conference, this time not only to expose the corruption of the past, but to officially announce the reforms that were transforming San Isidoro School. Before a crowd of reporters, parents, teachers, and students, Carmen delivered a powerful speech. She spoke of the need for justice, but also of redemption. San Isidoro would be a new school where merit and effort would prevail over privilege and corruption. "I was a victim of this corrupt system," Carmen declared, her voice steady. "But I am here to ensure that no one else suffers as I have suffered. We are building something new, something just, and this will be the greatest justice I can achieve." Applause echoed through the auditorium, and for the first time in many years, Carmen felt that the weight of her story was being lifted. With the reforms already underway and the school community gradually adapting to the new policies, Carmen felt she had finally achieved something meaningful. But she knew her mission was not completely fulfilled. It was necessary to ensure that the changes were sustainable and that the model of justice and transparency implemented at San Isidoro could serve as an example for other institutions. The days following the press conference were intense. Carmen and Javier Ruiz worked side by side to implement structural changes in the school's administration. A new independent council, composed of community members, parents, teachers, and even alumni, was established to ensure that decisions were made with transparency and fairness. Carmen also helped create a new merit-based admission system, ensuring that talented students from all backgrounds had the opportunity to study at San Isidoro. Additionally, courses and scholarship programs were expanded to support those without financial resources, but who showed academic potential. Lucia, Carmen's former friend, and now one of the school's leading teachers, played a crucial role in the transition. She implemented new teaching methods that prioritized inclusion and the holistic development of students, creating an environment where everyone felt valued and respected. Despite the positive changes, Carmen faced resistance from some sectors. Influential families, who had previously enjoyed privileges, attempted to undermine the reforms, but public pressure and support from the educational community proved stronger. Gradually, these critical voices were silenced. The story of San Isidoro College and the reforms led by Carmen began to gain national attention. Newspapers, television programs, and specialized magazines covered the case, highlighting how an institution that had once been synonymous with corruption and injustice was transforming into a model of equity and transparency. Carmen was invited to participate in conferences and debates across the country. Her work inspired other schools and universities to reevaluate their own practices. The Ministry of Education of Spain, pressured by public opinion and the changes that Carmen was promoting, announced the creation of a special committee to investigate similar cases in other institutions and implement reform policies based on the San Isidoro model. At one of these conferences, Carmen encountered an old acquaintance, the daughter of one of the influential families that, years ago, had helped ruin her life. Now an adult woman, she approached Carmen after a lecture and asked to speak privately. "I wanted to apologize, Carmen," said the woman, visibly emotional. "I was just a child, but I always knew that what they did to you was wrong. My father was one of the men who pressured Don Alfonso, and that haunts me to this day. Seeing what you've done for this school, and now for the country, is inspiring." Carmen, with the serenity she had gained over the years, smiled gently. "The past cannot be changed, but what we do with the present is what matters. I hope you can also find a way to contribute to a more just future." Carmen's words resonated deeply with the woman, who promised to help promote changes in other areas of her family's influence. After months of intense reforms and travels, Carmen decided it was time to return to San Isidoro to see firsthand the fruits of her labor. As she walked through the renovated hallways, now filled with murals painted by the students themselves, she felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. She met Javier Ruiz, who took her to one of the new classrooms, where students were attending a class on ethics and citizenship, one of the new courses introduced into the curriculum. Seeing those engaged young people discussing values like justice and social responsibility, Carmen realized she had achieved more than she could have imagined. That afternoon, there was a special ceremony in the school auditorium. Students, teachers, parents, and community members gathered to honor Carmen and celebrate the new era of San Isidoro. Javier took the stage and, on behalf of everyone, thanked Carmen for her courage and determination. Today, San Isidoro is not just a school. It is a symbol that, even in the worst situations, it is possible to find justice and redemption. And none of this would be possible without Carmen Vega. Moved, Carmen stepped onto the stage and delivered a brief but powerful speech. My journey began with pain and injustice, but I am here today to say that with effort and courage, we can transform what is negative into something positive. This school is an example that justice can prevail and that we all can make a difference. The struggle continues, not only here, but throughout the country. The applause was deafening. Carmen, who had begun her life in Seville as a young woman full of dreams, was now a woman who had shaped not only the future of a school, but also that of a nation. In the months that followed, Carmen was officially appointed as the director of San Isidoro College, a position she accepted with humility and responsibility. She continued to lead the reforms, always with an eye on the future and the impact of her actions. Her story of overcoming and justice inspired a generation, and her model of educational reform was adopted in schools and universities throughout Spain. Carmen became a national figure, respected and admired, but she never lost sight of her true mission: to ensure that no other student would go through what she had. Carmen Vega had transformed. From an unjustly expelled prodigy, she became a successful lawyer, an educational reformer, and ultimately a leader who inspired change. And as she looked towards the horizon of her hometown, Seville, she knew she had found the peace she had long sought. Justice had been served, and Carmen Vega, now at peace with herself, could finally rest. We hope you enjoyed this narrative. Help us by leaving your like and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss more emotional stories that touch the soul. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. We would love to know what you think, and thanks and criticisms are also welcome. See you in the next emotional video. Until then,